If you are young and you are already putting aside 10%, you will see the magic of what the bankers call compounding interest. You have 40 years, maybe 50 years, that the 2,000 that you put aside when you are on a measly salary at the age of 25, after 50 years, would have grown and grown and grown and grown and become amazing. But if you're my age, past 60, and I start putting aside 10%, it doesn't have enough time to grow. I should have started a long time ago, and now 10% will not get me to the finish line. At my age, I often say, try your level best, whatever age you are, to put aside the equivalent percentage of your age. For me, if I'm trying to catch up, I have to put aside 60%. Otherwise, I'm going to retire into poverty. Good thing about my age is, I now don't really have any kids in school. My wife and I live, alone, and we're building our house so we don't have rent to pay, and etc. So my consumption comes down considerably at this age, unless my lifestyle grows to consume at the level that, I now earn. I can't afford to do that. And so I put aside as much as I can. So 10% goes into your retirement, okay? Another 10% goes into your investments, okay? And you want to buy land. One of my daughters asked me recently, where do I put the money I'm getting? And I told her, decide where you eventually want to live and go and buy a property there while the cost of land is still cheap. Guys, buying land now is the cheapest it will ever be in your life. It is like taxes. It goes up and never comes down. In another 10 years' time, the cost of the plot you wanted will be now almost 50% over, and it will never come down. So if you have the means, you can't build a house, but you can say, I want to live in this area when I finally have the money. Go buy the plot now if you can afford that, and just sleep on it. It's accruing value. Its value is going up. The day will come when you build, even if you can't do that now. So I told her, go buy a property, and one day when you have the resources, you can build a house. Okay? So investments that you build up now and you can trade with and you can, liquidate so that you can grow it and whatever is needed. You do not touch your retirement fund for another 50 years. That one you allow it to just compound. But the investment fund, the idea of that is that you put it in this investment for a little while and you're getting better returns here, and so you go and put it in this investment and then you move it over here, you invest it. But the secret about investment, and this is a hard thing, do not invest any monies that you are not willing to lose. When you invest, there is always a possibility that the investment will not cash in. If you're like me, I invested in Uchumi shares, and it was high flying. I got nothing out of it when Uchumi seemed to collapse. But because it wasn't my retirement fund, that is still safe. And I said, Paule, I hope the other investments I had made in shares will make up for what I lost in Uchumi, and net, I will be ahead. I hope, okay? Now, investment you put aside and you invest it in something, that's another 10%. The fourth 10% is what we called your emergency fund. This is your rainy day fund. This is a fund when everything breaks down like it did with COVID, you have something to eat. This is a fund that will secure you for a year after you have been unjustly sacked from your place of work and there were no benefits that you are sacked with. You are paid your last salary and that's it. And it takes a year for you to get another, job. But you have an emergency fund and you begin to live on that emergency fund. praying that God can give you a job before that runs out. So that's your fourth. And then your fifth was what we would call, if we were in business, but this is personal life, but so it's not business. But in business, you'd call your asset replacement fund. Remember what I said last week, that your fridge and your car and your TV are not saved and they do not have eternal life. They will die, and that will be the end of them. And you will need to find the money to go and replace them. Maybe not the TV, you can live without that. Even the car you can live without. But boy, you're going to have a hard time trying to live without a fridge in this city of ours, the way that we have learned to live. And so you want to replace that. And it's not just that. There are other important things in your household that you need to replace. And so that's your replacement fund, okay? Now, when you think about it, when COVID began, I used to, for the longest, preach that, if you're living on more than 60% of your income, you're living beyond your means. But COVID made me change that figure. Because I saw how many people suffered as a result of COVID. It was completely out of the blue, not planned for, not expected, and you probably have friends, or maybe you are even one of those people who really struggled through COVID. My prayer is that things have changed, and you have learned a lesson that you will not go back to and never find yourself there again. But to be able not to find yourself there, you have to up what you're saving. And I myself changed it to 50%. If you're living beyond 50%, you're living beyond your means. Now think about it. Here's what it is. The emergency fund is a real saving. The asset replacement fund is not a real saving. It's just preparing to expend in the future to replace something that is a consumable, okay? My fridge is a consumable. And so when I put money aside for it, it has a short-term, saving capacity, and then I'm going to spend it to replace something that needs replacing or for an emergency that I hadn't planned for. So when you talk about what your real savings are, the tithe doesn't belong to you. The replacement fund is going to be consumed sooner than later. What you save is actually 30%. Your emergency is a saving because you never touch that one. Your retirement is a saving because you never touch that one. And your investment is a saving, a growth saving, because you don't touch and you don't consume that. 10% goes to the Lord, that's 40%. Your replacement fund, you eventually spend in the next 2 or 3 years, that's 10%. And then you live on 50%. That's your 100% done. So what my wife and I have done is, we count our investment fund, our emergency fund, and we count our retirement fund. And that 30% is what we are using to build our home. Because one of the principles I would teach you, had I the time, would be that if your loan capacity is greater than 30%, you're headed for trouble. It's going to catch up with you. Because you'll start consuming in areas you should not touch. You'll start stealing from the Lord and consuming the tithe. Because the replacement, or rather the payment for the loan you have taken with your SACCO, the bank, is now over the 30%. As long as it is under 30, you're comfortable as long as it is being invested in something that is retirement or investment or even emergency. And our home is retirement. And so we can take that money and invest it in getting a home so that we have somewhere to eventually retire, okay? But I can't invest it in a car. A car is not an asset. A car is a liability. It eats you and eats you and eats you. It consumes petrol, it wants tires, it wants replacement parts, it will consume insurance, it will consume. A car eats you and you become poorer for it. And you do not buy a car until your 50% is able to accommodate it. That's where you buy the car in. A car is not an asset. It is a liability. Okay? So let's go on to today's lesson. Today's lesson. You know that you're riding on the highway to poverty if any of these 7 things are true about your life. Okay, number 1, you never have any money left over at the end of the month. In other words, you're consuming everything. You are riding on the highway to poverty. And maybe it's a great ride. You're riding in a BMW and you're eating ice cream and you enjoy lunches and dinners at Java and at Art Cafe or some of these, bistros. And it was great riding to poverty, but you will eventually arrive at your destination. Okay? Your bills are spiraling out of control. And you're borrowing from the kiosk on the promise of paying at the end of the month. Your school fees have not yet been paid and they're paid late. You owe your doctor money. You haven't paid your lawyer. You have to collect and count your shillings. Actually, what I do with my shillings is, every shilling I get, I throw into a pot. I have a big flour pot at home. Okay, it's empty, dried flowers. I throw it in there. And I'm hoping one day when I retire, I'll count all my coins that I collected over 50 years, and they will be worth 1 million shillings. They probably won't. But hopefully, some of them will be so old, they'll be antiques that I can sell for 1 million shillings, okay? So you're counting your coins, and you have to dodge the mamamboga. You don't want to go by the shop because they'll call you and ask, ile bill, etc., etc. You're riding on the way to poverty. You carry a balance on your credit card. We'll talk about this next week, okay? You have no emergency fund. You are a train wreck waiting to happen. You hide what you buy from your spouse because you're guilty and you don't want to explain where did you get the money from. How come you always buy the shoes you want and I never have money to buy the shoes I want? Okay, so you hide what you buy. You borrow loans from friends and family and workmates regularly. And you borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and then next month you're borrowing from Susan to pay, Peter, and then you're borrowing from Janet to pay Susan, and you're always borrowing money from your friends and from your family, taking an advance on your payment. Always, by the time the 15th of the month comes, you're the first one to knock on the finance manager's door asking for an advance. It's a sign that you're riding on the road to poverty. Your total debt burden exceeds 30% of what you take home. Because it means with the 30%, the emergency fund gone, the retirement fund gone, and the investment fund gone, you are now borrowing from your living expenses, or you are borrowing from the Lord in a tithe, or you're borrowing from, your replacement, and it will catch up with you. Proverbs 21 and verse 20 says, "The fool spends his money as fast as he gets it." Were you just called a fool? It's not me calling you, by the way. It's God himself calling you a fool. Now, if you read this in the New International Bible, I like this translation better. It says, "The fool gulps down his money. This man will remain poor and will never create real wealth. But the wise man is like an ant. In the season of plenty, of abundance, they don't consume the extra. They set it aside so that in the season of need, they have enough to meet their needs." So today I want to talk about how you increase your earnings, okay? I have a friend, and we're in an e-group together. And one day she told us this story. She told us how she had gone into her garden and she had an empty pot. I think it was a pot she had sort of put aside, never used. It was there sitting in the corner of the garden, completely empty. And she went there, she happened to pass by that pot, and she discovered that some bees had gotten into the pot. And she immediately thought, danger, danger, these bees might harass us, they might sting us, they might sting my children, I need to get rid of these bees. And so she called the exterminator to come and get rid of the bees. But before he arrived, she thought to herself, what if it was the Lord who sent me these bees? What if God is about to bless me with honey and I am busy trying to get rid of the bees because of my fears? So instead of calling the exterminator, she called, these guys on the roadside who sell the hives, the beehives. They're almost always yellow because bees are attracted to the color yellow, okay? And so she called one of them and bought a hive and told him to come and move the bees out of the pot into the hive and then put it somewhere up a tree or somewhere safe for her. And she told us, guys, I now have 6 hives from that one. And I am bottling and selling honey as a cottage industry. Now, I like to say, I'm not a very clever guy, but I sure know how to copy. I went from that discussion and I bought my first hive. I now have 12 hives. I want to read a scripture, okay? Because today, my sermon is really titled, Multiply Your Income Revenue, okay? I want to read from the book of Exodus chapter 3, verse 1 to verse 11. This is what it says, you can follow with me. One day, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't the bush burning up? I must go closer and see. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush and said, Moses, Moses, here I am, Moses replied. Do not come any closer, the Lord warned. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering, so I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and to lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. But Moses, verse 11, protested to God and said, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? And he kept making excuses as to why he could not go. And God told him, Moses, go. Oh, but God, I can't. Moses, go. Oh, but Lord, I'm not the best person. Moses, go. And he wouldn't go. Moses protested again in Exodus chapter 4. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What will I say to them? The Lord never appeared to you. Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hands? A shepherd's staff. Remember, he was a shepherd. He was looking after his father's Jethro's sheep. And the Lord told him, throw it down to the ground. So Moses threw down the staff, and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back. Then the Lord told him, reach out and grab its tail. So Moses reached out and grabbed its tail, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hands. God had asked Moses, as we read in chapter 4, verse 1, Moses, what is that you have in your hand? And it was a dead, dry stick. And God told Moses, throw it down to the ground. And Moses did, and it turned into a living being. I want to teach you a principle about creating wealth, and it is this. If you take that which is otherwise dead in your hands and give it to God, He is able to bring it alive. When Moses took it up again, it died again. May I suggest that some of us are struggling with dead careers that are going nowhere and dead businesses that are not growing. But a dead stick doesn't grow. And until you submit it in its totality, in obedience to God, and give it to Him, it will always remain dead in your hands. And you may try and take all the business shortcuts that everybody in this city says, go and see so and take a gift, or you'll never get that license until you talk nicely, until you buy chai, until you do what, and you have tried all those things, but it still remains dead. You're trying to control it, you're trying to run it your own way, you're trying to make it be productive, but a dead thing does not reproduce. Unless you give it to the Lord, and in His might and His power as a living God, He brings it alive. May I suggest that there may be some here who are struggling, trying to bring alive a dead marriage. But when God tells you, go and say sorry and humble yourself, you grumble and complain, and like Moses, you're saying, this reason, that, she's the one who said this, he's the one who provoked me, and you refuse to do it, and your marriage remains dead. If you insist on control, and you insist on running this thing yourself, it may forever be dead until you give it to God and He brings it alive for you. In the book of Judges, God used the jawbone of a donkey to bring victory to Israel. He used an ox goad, which is like, the sticks the Maasais carry, okay? It would often have, a pointed end so that you could, direct the cattle or the sheep or whatever. He used an ox goad to defeat the Philistines through Shamgar. He used a tent peg in Deborah's hands to defeat the Canaanites. He used trumpets and jars to defeat the Midianites through Gideon. He used a slingshot in a little boy, teenager's hand called David to bring down Goliath. You see, God can use anything because it is not the thing that has the power to change the circumstances. It is God who takes that dead thing, like the jawbone of a donkey, and brings it alive to accomplish His purposes. And our faith is not in the jawbone of an ass or in an ox goad or whatever it is. Our faith is in the God who is able to bring this alive and bring victory through it. So the question I want to ask you is this: what is that in your hands? You call it a hobby. You call it a gift. You call it, something I learned. You call it something I was taught. But it has the power to create wealth for you if you will give it back to God and ask Him to bring it alive. You know, and I know, that some of us here, maybe many of us here, are not actually in the profession we trained in. But after we had done our course, our degree, our studies, our certificate, our diploma, we veered off and went into something we like to do anyway. And it has come alive. But there are probably 10 other things that you hold in your hands that you have never given serious thought to and never known to give them to God and tell God, God, bring this alive and help me create wealth. When I read this passage and I understood the lesson from it, I sat down with a pen and paper, and this is your homework for today. I sat down with a pen and paper and I asked God, God, open my eyes to see what maybe everybody else says is a natural gift I have, but I just brush it aside as, nikujaribu tu, it's not really a serious thing. I don't take it seriously. And yet, it is something that God can use to answer my prayer through. And I came up with a lot. I'll tell you, this was an exercise I did a number of years back, about, maybe about 10 years back, okay? After I began this journey of creating wealth. And I'll tell you the things I came up with because I'm still practicing some of them. Some of them the season has passed, but I'm still practicing some of them. And I'll just share maybe about 6 or 7 of them. But I actually have a list of about 20 whose season has not yet come. I'll explain that in a moment, okay? What's that you have in your hands? Okay, the first thing I immediately saw is I like dogs. I love dogs. I have always had dogs from the time I was a kid. My father kept guard dogs, and I would spend time with them. I would play with them. I would go out with them because I like dogs. And I still keep dogs. Even today, I think I have a quick count. I think I have something like, 7 or 8 dogs, okay? Yes, even now. But more recently, from about 15 years ago, I fell in love with 2 dogs, okay? Let me show you the 2 breeds I now keep. This is my first breed. It's called a Bowbell. That's it's true because when I take it out for a walk, I have 3 of these. When I take it out for a walk on the road, people cross the road, number 1, okay? And then you hear them say, Guy, is that a lion? Is that a lion? Because of the brown color. No, it's a dog. But it weighs up to 100 kilograms. In other words, it could have you for a snack, and it could have you for a snack. It weighs up to 100 kilograms, okay? And then I have 3 of those, and I have 2 of this other one that is a Rottweiler. Okay? I love Rottweilers, okay? They are black, they are dark, and if they come for you in the night, all you will see are 2 red eyes coming closer and closer. You will not know what hit you, okay? They weigh about maybe a maximum of 50 kilos. So the other one is twice as big as this one, okay? And I like big dogs. I don't like these shenzi little things that they call, the Japanese Spitz. There is no more irritating dog. There are 2 breeds I cannot keep. I will shoot it. One is called a Japanese Spitz, okay? It's a white little dog, okay? That is, they never shut up. And my neighbor has 5 of them. Sometimes in the night I get up and say, well, I'm gonna poison those dogs. Okay? Then the other one is another dog called a Jack Russell, okay? A Jack Russell is neurotic, okay? You watch it, yes, a Jack Russell. You know, those were the dogs. I'll tell you the two dogs what the purpose was. A Jack Russell used to be used to ferry out rats out of holes, okay? So they were bred small so that they can go down the rat hole or the rabbit hole and they can go and, grab it and pull it out. The thing never learned. Now you're fed food. It still behaves as though it's going after that thing. So a Jack Russell, in the room, will climb the furniture, run around the back of the sofa, climb up on the TV, down the backside, and it's always like this, a Jack Russell. It is neurotic. It needs medication. Okay? I think a Japanese Spitz was what was called a lap dog, if you've ever heard that term. In the cold, cold winters of the northern hemisphere, they would breed dogs that had a high body temperature and were very furry, and you'd put it on your lap like a warmer. That's what a lap dog was. It's Africa. What are you doing with a Japanese Spitz? Okay. Anyway, that's enough about dogs. Those are my peeve. Okay. So I have two dogs. Now, I looked at these dogs and I thought, this is God's blessing. Because I love dogs. I know everything about dogs. I read about their history, their temperament, their training, everything about dogs, okay? And here's how a dog works to create wealth for you. Each Rottweiler or each Bobel puppy that you buy or sell, if you buy the pedigree, okay? The pedigree means that it's a certificate that comes with the dog. It's not the dog itself that is a pedigree. It's a certificate, the birth certificate that comes with the dog that shows who its parents were, its grandparents, its great-grandparents, maybe up to 4 or 5 generations. That document is called a pedigree, and it shows that this is a pure breed, okay? If you buy a pedigree Bobel, it costs you about 110 or 120,000 shillings at 8 weeks. It's a lot of money. And what you do is you buy a female from this guy over here and you buy a male from that lady over there. It takes 2 years before you breed it. You don't breed it before, because if you breed it before, it's like, having a child of 8 years give birth. It will damage them. It's not right, okay? You let them mature, and they mature at 2 years, and then you breed. They'll give you anything between 8 to 12 puppies, okay? You bring up those puppies, and you can always know when you go to Naivas who is a dog breeder. You know why? Their cart is full of Weetabix and eggs and milk, because that's what you feed it on. None of this top dog nonsense, okay? None of this pink meat they sell you from Uplands. That will poison your dog, okay? You go and you buy the best and you feed it, okay? In the first year is where it adds its protein. So you buy a lot of protein. We buy for our dogs chicken heads, okay, from what do they call them? Kenchik, okay? They sell them for about 100 shillings a kilogram, and we crush them and mince them and give them to the dogs along with a bit of starch and such. It's expensive food, okay? We buy and we give them. A little puppy for the first, 6 months is fed 3 times a day, and then 2 times a day for the next 6 months, and then you feed it once a day for the rest of its life. It will give you the puppies. By the time you get to the time, 2 months when the puppies are ready to be sold, you've given it, DHLP shots, rabies shots, etc., etc., etc. You're giving it vitamins, and you're looking after this thing like a baby. But then you got 10 puppies. You spend about 20,000 per puppy to bring it to 2 months, and then you sell it for 100,000. How much profit have you gone? Pardon? Pardon? 80,000 times 10. That's a clean 800,000. I have a friend who was keeping a pure breed for sale. And he was wondering, why aren't my dogs, adding weight? I'm buying Weetabix, and I'm buying them, meat, good mince meat, quality mince meat, and etc., etc. Kumba, his kawaka, was taking that home and feeding the dogs ugali. He went home with a Weetabix. And the dogs were not growing. So this was the first thing I realized God has put in my hands. And I began now to get serious about registering my dogs and about selling the puppies. Sometimes the market can be hard because there are not many people who are going to spend, 120,000 on a puppy. But there are people who will, okay? I myself do, okay? And so you find the market and you sell the dogs. Number 2 was my honey, okay? I now have 12 hives. I'll tell you how honey works, okay? Each kilogram of honey until recently has been selling at about, 1,000 shillings a kilogram, which is about a liter, okay? 1,000 shillings a kilogram. If you have one hive, a hive, if it is well positioned, somewhere near water where the bees have easy water and where there's a lot of wildflowers and trees that flower, acacia trees and, just wildflowers where they can get their food from, their nectar from, and they're not struggling, okay? If they can't find food, they will swarm and they will leave you, okay? But if they can, they will settle down and they will multiply. You divide your hives ever so often so that you can keep multiplying it, okay? Each hive you can harvest 3, maybe 4 times a year, depending on the abundance of food you have around you and how easy it is for them to get the water they need, okay? So let's say 3 times, conservative, 3 times a year. Each kilogram of honey will give you at least 1,000 shillings. And every time you harvest, you get let's say about 10 kilos from a hive, okay? So it's 10 kilos and it's 3 times a year, so it's 30 kilos, and that is 30,000, and then you just multiply them to 100 hives. I'm trying to grow mine to at least 200 hives because I now have a farm that is all of, 6 acres on one side and 5 acres on the other. And you can put them in places where they don't trouble you. Hives are like aeroplanes, okay? They go up and then they fly. And so depending on what you put around the hive, if you don't want to ever meet a bee, then you just put a really big fence that goes up something like 6 meters, and the bees will always first go up, get their bearing from the sun, and then fly to their food at that level. You'll never see a bee. If you put them down here, and there is nothing around it, then they're flying at this level, and they will, you will occasionally meet with them, and then they can be a nuisance. And so you strategically place your hives. Each hive is giving you about 30,000. And the great thing about bees is they never take a sick off, they never take leave, they don't take medical, they don't ask for an advance. They go into your neighbor's place and steal his nectar and bring it to you. I mean, why wouldn't you keep a hive? And you get free honey. So that is the second thing that God put in my hands. And so I read books about bees, and I'm always trying to figure out and watch YouTube so that I can become better and better and multiply my hives to 200, okay? Here's the third thing that God put in my hands. Some of you know this, some of you don't, okay? It is a kitchen garden. Do you know on a little kitchen garden that is the size of half this room or even a third of this room, you can feed a whole family? It takes very little space to grow enough food for yourself. And a kitchen garden, I'm not doing it so that I can go and, and sell at the market. I'm doing it so that I don't have to go to Naivas and buy the vegetables. I can grow them fresh here. And you know what about my vegetables? They're not like yours from Naivas. Mine are not grown with sewage. Mine are not grown, those big green ones you see there. Mine, I know what goes into them. I had a farmer once tell me, unaona hizi mboga, hii siwezi kula. I asked him why. And he said, vile farmers wanafanya is they spray them the day before they are collected, so that you don't see any bugs on them. But he himself knows that when you spray your food with those poisons that kill the aphids and those sorts of things, you need a latency period of about a week, 7 days, up to a month, okay? And if you eat it before then, it will make you sick. This is why we're dying with cancer. When I'm 100 years old, I'll come and visit you at 60 when you're going, because you ate all those Naivas sukuma wikis. Mine are fresh, okay, from the farm. I want to be sure about the quality of my food, but it saves me having to pay market. It may be a cow, because you get the milk much easier. It may be food that you're growing. It may be fruits. I love avocados. I probably eat 1 or 2 every day, and I have planted at least 100 avocado trees as my perimeter fence and all those sorts of things. They have not yet fruited, but they will one day. And I will be able to save the cost of buying my food from the market where there's a profit for somebody else. So that's a third thing that God has put in my hands. Here's a fourth thing that He's put into my hands. When we lived in Karen, we had a beautiful garden. And we would allow people to come and take wedding photographs there. Because it was flowered, we tended to it, we cared for it, and would allow people to come and take wedding photographs there at 10,000 shillings for, a shot. It wasn't a lot of money, but it paid for the gardener who looked after the place for us. And so it saved money in my pocket that I could then put aside. A fourth thing that God had put in our hands. Okay, here's a fifth thing. I keep rabbits. I have about 50 rabbits. And the idea with rabbits is, okay, if you have 2 rabbits and you let them breed and you don't eat them, but you watch that they're not cross-breeding, and you have a male and a female, and you let them breed and breed and breed and breed for a year. At the end of the year, you'll probably have something like 1,000 rabbits. They're that productive. Now, why would I do this? There are 3 products you get from a rabbit. Number 1 is the meat. A rabbit weighs about the same as a chicken, okay? About 1.5 kilos. And there's good meat there, said to be very healthy because it's very lean meat, okay? And so you harvest it at 3 months and, you eat that on the table. But a rabbit also gives you a second thing, and it is the susu, the urine, okay? It is about the best fertilizer you can ever come across. I asked my gardener, how come nowadays our sukuma wiki is so big? He said, susu power. You harvest the urine, you dilute it at the ratio of 1 to 20 and feed it to your plants. It is about the best fertilizer that you can ever use. Okay? But if you dilute it to about 1 to 30 or 1 to 40, then it also acts as an insecticide to keep aphids and caterpillars and those sorts of things away. That's the second thing. The third, and I'm doing that already, okay? Our rabbits, we collect everything. Put, plexiglass, or put what you call it, the fiberglass, the corrugated iron sheet fiberglass is under the cages. Collect all that susu, and we have a hole in the ground with a plastic water tank, and we just let it fill up. There are people who go around asking whether you can sell them that, because they know the value of it. We don't, because we use it on the farm. But there's a third product that you get from a rabbit, and it is when you skin it after you've slaughtered it. If you treat the skin, just simple tannery, not important, go into industries and such. You can actually do this at home. It makes the softest, furriest leather that you want. And you can actually turn that into a cottage industry with leather. So I keep rabbits. Okay? Here's a fourth thing that God gave us. It's water harvesting. When we first built the home we first lived in, we didn't know about water harvesting. You take water and you just use it as you use it. But here's something you need to reckon with, okay? You flush your toilet with drinking water. How wasteful is that? Think about it. Because what water comes into your home, you use for everything. You wash with it, you wash the floors, you brush your teeth with it, you also flush the toilet. You flush your toilet with drinking water. Nairobi is and will always be, no matter what they tell you, a water-starved region. We will always have water problems. And unfortunately for those of you who come from Syokimau, this is Mavoko. The dream of water in this area is a pipe dream. So you'll use Bowsers, which means you're buying your water at 10 times the price if it had come through the pipes, okay? We tried to farm in Lukenya, but we use Bowsers because there's no water out there. Yeah. The farm we bought is next to a river, so that one is okay. But we're living in a place where we're trying to develop the farm where there is no water. But that's also where we're building a home, okay? And so what we have done is our house has 3 plumbing systems. There is a plumbing system for what you call the white water. There is a plumbing system for gray water. And there is a plumbing system for black water. Black water is toilet water. You can't do much with it. The idea of water conservation is you must use every drop of water at least twice. So we use the white water to shower. But your shower water, you guys aren't KYMs working in the chamber the whole day long and sweating tons of thingy. You go to the office, you're clean. You come in the evening, you're still clean. Okay? And so when you have a shower, there's a bit of sabuni, but that water, if it goes into the septic tank, it's a waste of water. It's still good water. So we collect that into an underground tank. All the shower water, all the basins, all that goes into the underground tank. Okay? And we use that to grow the garden and for our kitchen garden without even needing to do much. Okay? And after, you see now we've used it twice. So now, that one now we can also pipe back into the toilets with very simple filtration into the toilets and flush the toilets now with gray water, not with white water. Okay? That goes into the septic tank. But instead of doing a septic tank nowadays, you can do a domestic biodigester, which means then that at the end of it, you get clean water at the end of it. In Singapore, they get quality drinking water from their biodigesters. I don't trust our Miros enough to drink that water, me. So what I do is I take the last product of the biodigester is what waters my trees and my hedges on the compound. And they don't mind, because a little ammonia and a little nitrogen is actually quite good for them. But I don't bring it back into the house. The idea being conserve water. We buy a boza of water at 8,000 to 10,000 shillings each for 10,000 liters. Can you imagine how much I save in a year? Okay? Think about it. You have the capacity to put solar power and save yourself KPLC. And you will get your money back at the present rates of electricity within 8 years. And then from there, it's free electricity. You have the technology. You understand this. And you can actually do it. There are more and more people in Nairobi now who are not on the grid. They are not part of KPLC. They completely exist on solar. And I discovered this when we bought a property in Malindi and they kept telling us, electricity is coming, electricity is coming. This is now a year later and still hasn't come. But because I have pastors who go there every week, going in on Sunday, leaving on Saturday, there's never a week extra or empty the whole year. I had to do something and I went solar. I did not know that solar can run your house completely without need of KPLC. And so that's what we're doing now so that we can get that bill off the table and we can save money and put it into investments. What else has God put in our hands? Let me put a couple of things, okay? We keep pigs. Okay, right now I think I have 15 pigs. Okay, and the economy of pigs is it costs you about 15,000 to bring up a pig. Okay, somewhere between if you're making the food yourself, maybe you can do it for about 13,000, 15,000. Uplands will buy the pig from you for about 18,000, okay? And I did these maths and I tried to figure it out and I thought it's not worth it. The only way that a pig works, keeping pigs works, and this is what you see with farmers, is where you keep 400 of them, 1,000 of them, because it's an economy of scale. If each pig is only giving you 100, how much, 3,000, 4,000 shillings, and you have 100 of them, that's 400,000. And so it works at that level. But for me, who doesn't want to make an industry of that, I want something on the side as a side hustle. I don't want to keep 1,000 pigs. If I keep 1,000 pigs, that's a full-time job. Just even finding food for them, especially now that Russia has attacked Ukraine and there's no wheat in the market and etc. Farmers are really struggling, okay, with keeping pigs. And so here's what we do for our pig keeping. One is we now breed black soldier flies. You know what black soldier flies are? They're like maggots, okay? They're bigger than the house fly, Okay, they're about that long. A black soldier fly is about that long. And again, the way that black soldier fly works is it goes through the egg stage, and then it goes into the larva stage, and then it goes into the pupa stage, and then adult stage, and then starts all over again. Now, by the time it gets to the larva stage, okay, it is 48%, is it? No, 43% protein and 32% fat. Once it becomes a pupa, it never eats again. It becomes a pupa, turns into an adult. The adult has no mouth. It breeds, and within 2 or 3 days, it dies. Okay? So here's what you do. You harvest your black soldier fly just before it becomes pupa. At the end of it, while it's still white, before it turns into a black pupa, and you feed that to your chickens. My eggs are this big. Okay? And you take that and feed it to any non-ruminant animal. You're a non-ruminant. You only have one stomach. A ruminant has 4 stomachs, okay? So you feed it to any non-ruminant animal, and I feed it to my pigs. Pigs add protein only in the first 3 months of their life. So you feed it to them then, okay? And my pigs are overweight from protein, not from fat. After 3 months, you stop feeding because now they're adding fat, okay? I feed it to my chickens. I have geese, or rather not geese. Geese don't eat protein, animal protein. I have ducks, I have turkeys, and I have guinea fowls, okay? The guinea fowls are not for eating. Somebody told me they're very tasty, so I tried eating it. It's like a kienyeji. I didn't see any difference. The reason I keep guinea fowls is they take care of all the tick and flea infestation on the whole farm at no cost. They love ticks and fleas. And so we don't have any. We don't even need to treat for them because they do that work, okay? But you feed this to the dogs because dogs are non-ruminant, and you yourself can eat the same. Now you're saying, eat maggots. Yes, eat maggots. Insects make the largest weight by mass of any living thing in the world today. And whether we like it or not, we are going in that direction, that they're going to be the food for the generations ahead of us. Some of you have eaten insects. You eat the white ant that comes when the rain comes, okay? And you catch them and fry them. They're like peanuts. They taste like peanuts. They're very tasty. Anyone here who's ever done that? Yes, yes, yes. Well, so too with the black soldier fly. So my dogs eat it, my pigs eat it, my chickens eat it, and even us who are cooking at home. Okay? So we eat them also, we fry them. Okay, so that is what I feed my pigs. We also go to the hotels around us and the kiosks and the eateries, and we clear their rubbish for them free of charge. But this is what we take to our pigs so that we don't have to buy market food. And so regularly, maybe once a month, I slaughter a pig. And then I add value to my pig meat because I turn them into homemade sausages that I sell for 2,000 shillings a kilogram. And so a pig, I sell my pigs when I've sold all the sausages for about 48,000 a pig, and not the uplands cost. It's income, okay? Some of you own cars. Have you ever thought of using it for Uber? But they sit in the sun while you're in the office doing nothing. They're a servant who is not benefiting you in any way. What about those of you who own things like, who have a gift of baking? What about those of you who can write books, can write stories? What about those of you who can tutor on top of, whatever skill you have? There are things that God has given you that are lying dead in your hands because you have never seen them as something that God can bring alive. And each of us has multiple examples of this. They may not be dogs. I love dogs. But you have something else that you can do that will bring you not big money, but little by little, it will add up to something of significance. What is that in your hands? God is asking you. Now, let me close by turning to a different scripture, okay? And just drawing some thoughts out. This is not new, guys. You've read it before, but you read it with different eyes. So I'll open your eyes today, because your first prayer has to be, God, open my eyes to see what I'm not seeing. Okay? Help me see what skills I have, sewing, knitting, fashion design, whatever it is, art, show me so that I can turn it into an income stream. Okay? Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 2 says this: invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. For you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. COVID was us. That was our disaster. And God is saying, multiply your income streams and invest in them, because those will save you one day when you need that cash flow. And we have an example of this in the Bible, Proverbs 31. Now, I said you read this, but you read it with the wrong eyes. All the guys read and say, I want a wife like this. All the ladies read and they say, I want to be this woman. Well, there's another reason to read this. Let's read it for that reason. A wife of noble character who can find. She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. And then this is what I want to draw. This is what you need to see when you read about the Proverbs 31 woman. Number 1, she is like a merchant ship. Okay? She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She has a little cottage industry where she's making, cardigans or what do you call them, throws or something that she can sell. Okay, number 1. Number 2, she is like the merchant ship bringing food from afar. She gets up while it is still night and provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. She's into real estate. That's her second cottage industry. Her third cottage industry is, what is it? She speculates in land, and out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. Third little business she's running is that she's also making wine and grapes, okay? Number 4, she sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable. She has a duka somewhere where she's buying and selling things. Okay, number 4. Number 5, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hands, she holds a distaff, that is a weaving machine, and grasps the spindle with her fingers, making cloth. That's what you use a spindle and a distaff as a weaving machine. Number 6, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed covers for her beds. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. She's also dealing with cloth and providing for her family, if not selling what she's making. Number 7, her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes a seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. This woman is industrious. And she's got, number 8, she supplies merchants with sashes, okay, that you tie around your waist. She's got 8 little side hustles that she's doing, apart from looking after the family and whatever else. The Proverbs 31 woman gives us an example of wealth being created by what would otherwise have been dead in your hands, except that you took it back to the Lord and asked him to bless you for it. And this is why we have to commend Doreen. Where is Doreen? Doreen is here. Doreen, thank you for being my sermon illustration today, that you've gone and started your own thing. Don't sit around waiting for employment. Yes, if employment comes, take it, but keep running that shop. Keep running that side hustle. And begin to explore what else can you do and not just the one thing. There's a problem with education in this land. I don't know if you know this. It's changing now. It's not as big a problem. One of the things that happened when we were colonized by the British is that the British believed that they would always be the ones who control this land. And they still do control some of their colonies, like the Falkland Islands in Argentina, okay? They still control that, and the Cayman Islands, and etc. We fought for independence, and so we got from under their thumb, okay? But they set up 2 education systems in this country. The one educational system was for their children. All the posh schools that they set up, Kenya High and Lenana, and all the big schools and etc., were to educate their children to become industry leaders. And then they set schools for Miros, okay? And the purpose of the African schools and the curriculum and the education was to raise up Africans who could be clerks and could serve the white man. This curriculum was not changed in Kenya's education for the first almost 50 years of our independence. It was not changed. So anybody who's my age, you are made to be a clerk. Maybe some of the younger ones now, are rising up to something bigger. But we were educated on an education that was supposed to make us blue-collar workers. The white-collar work was for the Wazungus. Okay? And so we don't dream. We see gifts, we don't do anything with them. We don't invest in them because we're going after paid employment as our security. But that was a colonization that took place in our heads when we were constantly fed with the thinking that you're no good except to serve a Muzungu. And that is why Kenyans still say, if you want this country to work, just appoint a Muzungu. Shame on us. God has given you gifts. Ask him what they are. See them. Listen to what your friends say about you, and then go and invest in them. Each of you, through the next 10 years, should try and come up with at least 10 of those gifts and turn them into income revenue. It may not even have anything to do with your career or what you studied for in school, but God has given it to you, and you can generate wealth. So this is your homework. Sit down with a piece of paper and start asking you, what are my gifts, my natural talents that I've never taken serious? And what am I already doing that I can monetize and make it into an income revenue stream? God bless you. Thank you.